Hello, my name is Evan Howe. I am an undergraduate rising sophomore at the University of Washington, Seattle, and my tech talk will be on a type-safe way to write GraphQL queries in TypeScript. So, the problem. So, one of the first problems is that when you're writing GraphQL queries in TypeScript, they have to be compiled and run to know if they're correct. So, for example, if I were to write this specified query, I am taking this example of all the queries I'm writing from the Star Wars API called swapi.graph.cool. So this has all the information regarding Star Wars movies and anything related to that. So if I were to write this kind of query, so I'm getting all the films and then getting all the tomatoes in all films, I would not know if this query would be correct. Well, logically speaking, it's very clear that the query doesn't work. But if I were to actually make sure that this query were to work or not, I would have to actually run this query. So if I were to run this query, then I would get the result, the error. But preferably, I would like to determine whether or not there is an error before I actually run the query. So that's the first problem. The second problem is even in TypeScript, GraphQL queries have to be written in a specific format. So, for example, if I were to write a query to run in TypeScript, I would write it in this sort of format. So it'd be like GQL and then have a backtick and then write the specified query. So, for example, query all films and then with an actual variables like ID, title, and director. This looks a little bit clunky if I were to continue writing GraphQL statements inside TypeScript, and preferably would like it so that everything is written in TypeScript. And the lastly and most important is that writing GraphQL queries aren't type safe. So similar to what I've said above, the queries I write, I don't know if when I run it, it'll compile or not until I actually run it. So preferably I would like to determine whether or not if I'm writing the queries correctly or not before I actually run the query. So these are the three main problems with writing GraphQL in TypeScript. So the solution is a library that I have created with the help of my mentor, Michael Wharton. So in this example, I have this specified query. So this query gives me the GraphQL information of The Force Awakens. And looking here, it's a little bit clunky when I'm writing TypeScript. So rather than writing like this, I transformed it to write it like this. So you have a constant, and then you can select the information that you want to select. So for this in case, I can select the director, select the title, select the ID, and then rename the entire query, and then adjust by adding a specified variable. So if I were to run this, we can see that the information I'm getting is the correct ID, and I'm getting The Force Awakens directed by J.J. Abrams, which is correct. So what makes this really good, though, is if, for example, I wanted to add a type tomatoes here, we can see that if I were to select type tomatoes, there is no specific actual variable for tomatoes, so it would actually mark it red before I actually compile it and run it, which is what's really neat about this library. There's also a specified option for adding mutations, which is queries. This is very similar to queries, except that it alters the database in the backend. So the main functionalities of what I've done with this library. So looking at the code, what I really like about this specific library is the amount of generics that are used, which means that if I were to select different, or if the client were to select any amount of variables, it would still be able to create generate the specified query. So whether it be like a number, string, any of that sort, adding these generics just makes it a lot more usable in terms of its functionality. So I've I've added an interface for each specified type. So there's a base and then added functionalities for the mutation in the query. Also, I've created just specifically for the Apollo library. Methods in which that it takes, how it works is it takes in the variables that the user chooses and then converts it into a string and then parses it and allows um, allows the library to use the specified query, which is what is done in the use Apollo query in the use Apollo mutation here. So even though this product or this project was on my own or a solo team, I wouldn't consider it a solo because there's a lot of coordination with Michael. Michael helped a lot in this process by also coordinating and making sure that I was on task and I was not straying away from the actual product, and also given a lot of amazing coding reviews that helped improve my code a lot while I was programming through GitHub. So I wouldn't consider it a solo team, but it was a project with just myself. I would like to continue working on this past Code Labs project. I would like to expand the type-safe functionality of the library at the backend as well, where server developers can also make sure that what they're writing is type safe. And also afterwards, I would also like to check the queries mutations at runtime against the runtime schema, basically making sure that everything written on the client and backend, everything just connects for the most part. If you would like to contact me, my email is at evanhow@uw.edu. And then if you want to message me on Discord, it'll be at nublet with the numbers 0315. And then you can take a look at my website if you're interested, nublet.github.io. Thank you very much for listening to my Tech Talk.